Just over 12 months ago, I attended a powerful speaking retreat. It was an extraordinary event, and at the end of an intensive 5 days, we all gave a presentation, and it was internal, it was just amongst ourselves. At the end of my presentation, I said the words, "I am enough." That was the first time I'd ever said that. And it was incredibly profound until, reflecting back on it some months later, I thought, yes, I said the words, I believed them intellectually, but I didn't feel it in my heart. In my heart there was something gravely missing. So let's go back to the beginning and look at where things went wrong. As a 6-year-old, my parents left me with my grandparents. My grandmother, I woke up one morning with a blood nose, had soiled the sheets, and my grandmother left me in a darkened room for 3 days with no stimulus as an incredibly well, energetic, enthusiastic 6-year-old. Okay, that was pretty traumatic, and that was only one of a range of really witcherly behaviours. And it was pretty traumatic, but I could have survived that, except that sometime later, sometime in the next 12 months, my grandmother decided again that I was going to go and stay with her, and no amount of pleading with my parents made any difference. They insisted that I stay with her again. That was incredibly traumatic. And what was really traumatic was the fact that my parents were the two people in this world who I loved and trusted more than anybody else. They were the people who had the responsibility to keep me safe, and they had betrayed me. Not through any meanness on their part, but because they too were enthralled to my witchly grandmother. And so I discovered at 6 years old that my voice wasn't good enough, that I wasn't being heard, that I wasn't good enough somehow. That was how I translated it in my young mind. It took immediate effect. At the end of grade 1, walking home from high school, under the gum trees where the magpies swooped, I said to my brother, "What are these numbers at the bottom of my report card?" And he said, that was the place that I came in the class. I was 13th out of 27. I found that really intriguing. By grade 2, however, there was no coming 13th out of 27. I was going to come top. If I couldn't come top, then I would be second. I had to be better. I had to be faster. I had to be more gorgeous. I had to be everything to be noticed and to be heard. And so at a very early age, I managed to create an alter ego that I ended up calling my performative self. And that's had a really profound impact on half a century for me. So let's fast forward. 20 odd years down the track, I married a Frenchman. I didn't know when I married him that he was both gay and he was violent. Pretty poor choice. Now, I had worked, for those 20 odd years, I had worked to get my grandmother to love me, and I'd worked to get everyone else to love me, and I would bend over backwards to get people to love me. And so I bent over backwards for him too, and further and further and further backwards, and further and further and further backwards, because he didn't want a wife. He wanted an Australian permanent residency status. He wanted someone to support him through year 12 and university. And he was really very, very cruel. And he played into my sense of lack of self-worth by always comparing me with others. After we'd been out somewhere, how did I look compared to the others? How did I talk compared to the others? Was I as witty as the others or wittier? So I was a mother, I was a tutor, I was a trophy, and I was a financier. I was anything but a wife. 4.5 years it took. I'm slow. 4.5 years it took before I finally said, no, I'm out of here. I'm not going to go on funding your university studies. I'm actually going interstate to study myself. And he had no resources left other than violence. And so he hit me a number of times. As a result of that, I have chronic tinnitus and I have deteriorating hearing. I'm quite deaf and I wear hearing aids. But I thought I'd done a fabulous job because I learnt to laugh at my hearing loss. I learnt to be, loud and out there about it. And I took him to court. I had him charged with assault. I was tough, I was brave, I was strong. And I thought, and I read the right books, and I saw a counsellor, and I thought I had done this so well. So I sat back and smugly congratulated myself. Let's fast forward another 20 years. I'm still bending over backwards, normally in the work context, and yes, I've largely avoided relationships. So, largely in the work context, it was really important to me that people who were in some kind of authority position over me throughout my university years would give me accolades, would be respectful and appreciative of the time and the effort and the work that I put in. I hadn't learnt to stand on my own 2 feet. I hadn't learnt to look after myself. Now finally, not very long ago, I hit the wall hard. Again, it was that bullying, the cycle of bullying followed by the extreme betrayal. And I hit the wall really, really hard, and I hit rock bottom. I'd always had a slight suicide ideation. Now my suicide ideation became incredibly grandiose. It was magnificent. I was going to be a very, very beautiful corpse. And I wasn't going to put anybody to any trouble. I'd have my funeral organised. I'd have eulogies organised. I would ensure that there was no way that anyone had to do any real work to finalise my life. Again, it was performative. It wasn't real. Not when you're imagining yourself as, some sort of glorious corpse. So, having hit the wall so hard, having hit rock bottom, I had 2 choices. One was to die and one was to live. Okay, we had to discount death. That wasn't going to do it. So I chose to live. But in choosing to live, I realised that I had to do 3 things. I could no longer leave myself at risk. So I had to have the desire to make genuine changes to myself. I had to find the resources to support those changes, and I had to do an enormous amount of hard work. Don't get me wrong, it is really hard work. It's really, really hard work. But I did that. I had the desire. I was no longer going to be treated in the way that I felt I'd been treated. I had the resources. I had a fantastic medical team, and they were great at validating validating me so that I felt that I was okay. But they weren't any good at leading into the future and creating that change. For that, I needed to start listening to my friends, actually listening to them, not with my head, but with my heart, and taking on board what they said. And I needed coaching. There's a whole new world out there of coaches who are building up this remarkable business where they actually push you forward. And so I actually enrolled as a coach and I took on coaches. And it's a really, really tough journey. It's a tough journey facing yourself. It's a tough journey being able to say, I am enough. It's a really tough journey and it's one that continues on and on and on. So now I'm on the train and I need to stay on the train for the rest of my life. But it's really exciting. Already, birds are singing louder, and that's not a bad statement for a deaf person. Birds are singing louder, colours are more vivid, I'm becoming much more energetic, and the world is changing. So if you think that you might have a crack in your foundation, that something in your early imprinting years might have had an adverse effect on you, don't ask yourself, am I enough? Because we are all expert at deluding ourselves, masters of it. Ask yourself instead, what are the risks I'm taking? What are the risks I'm taking? If I'm going to live in my head and not my heart, what are the risks I'm taking? Am I prepared to go through that dreadful, dreadful period of anxiety and depression? It's a good question. Certainly for me, now, 14 months later, I can stand here and I can say to you, a group of people, some of whom I love dearly, some of whom I've never met, and I can say to you, not with my head, I am enough, but I'm now learning to be able to say from my heart, I am enough. And it's a wonderful journey. Thank you.